Hey, all you hot listeners, this is episode 4 of Husband and Wife Talks. This episode, Marta and I will be recanting our experience out in Denver, where we go apartment searching. We give our first experiences with Denver, how we feel about it. We went exploring Denver a tiny bit. We're excited to share that with you, along with continuing our honeymoon talk. We go into Florence this episode. So all this episode will basically be Denver for the first half, and then we go into Florence. And then you'll also be seeing in your feed, maybe 10 minutes after this one is uploaded, that there's going to be another episode, episode 5, where we're going to be talking about part 3, because we didn't realize we were going to be talking for 2 hours, basically. So part 3 of the honeymoon talk will be just about our experience in Lake Como, traveling tips. So stick with us through this episode, and then download the other one, and you'll be happy to hear it all, I think. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Marta.
Hey, Adam.
We're back here again. Are you excited?
Very excited.
So I guess, what should we talk about?
What should we talk about? Well, we promised part 2 of the honeymoon, so that should be on the agenda.
I think it is on the agenda, but we were just recently in Denver for searching for apartments, and I figured we should maybe talk about that in our experience right off the top. You've been to Denver. Actually, you've never actually been stayed at Denver for long, because you'd always go skiing, so you just
City
leave
of Denver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
You said state of Denver?
I said state of Denver? I thought I said city of Denver. Well, this is embarrassing. Already off to a hot start. But you've never actually stayed in the city of Denver before, because you'd always just go right to the mountains and ski. Or what were your impressions of Denver?
I thought it was a cool city. So we flew in, landed at 7 a.m., I think. Actually, we were early, so it was like 6:45 a.m. Mountain Time. And then we got our car and drove, and I mean, it was a pretty city from far away, and since it's so flat, you could see the mountains, which was cool. Because, I mean, usually we just drive straight to the mountains, but being able to see the mountains from the city is also a pretty neat experience. So I thought it was high level, very beautiful, and nice city.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, add some context. We were going out there to find a place to live in a short amount of time, because we flew out on the 4th of July, and then ended up coming back late Friday night. But we flew in at 5:30 in the morning was our flight, Eastern Standard Time. So we woke up at 3. It was a long day on 4th of July. I guess we just didn't think about it, but most of the apartment complexes were closed on the 4th of July because of holiday. So we only got to see the more, I guess, the newer apartments, because they wanted to get people in. And it seems like in that area, you kept hearing it over and over and over again, how people were moving to that area, and there's nonstop constructions of new apartment buildings. So it seems like Denver is going to be a hot spot of people coming, it seems like. But I really enjoyed the area. It had distinct feelings of different areas you would go to. Like the Denver Tech Center was it seemed, I don't want to say suburban-y, but had more trees, and there were some businesses around, but there was a lot of other things, and it felt kind of secluded. And I know you were mentioned from somebody that you knew that every area sort of felt distinct in their own personal way. Like you go to Golden, that feels different than Inglewood versus Centennial and Lone Tree. And then all the way down, if you go all the way down to Castle Rock, it's completely different.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about how that applies in Maryland, because I've just kind of grew up and been around this area for so long. But it was pretty distinct just driving around that first day and looking at the different neighborhoods that we had in mind to live in, and seeing a really nice area to driving 5 or 10 minutes away, and then suddenly, flip of a switch, totally different area, totally different vibes. And you keep driving, and then it's another different area. So it's really interesting, because I don't really see that in the area we're in now. I kind of feel like, in general, the county as a whole has one pretty distinct vibe. I mean, there's little pockets here and there that are a little bit different, but there it was like, even within one county, and I mean, we were still in Denver proper or whatever, just driving through the suburbs, but it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was very distinct when we were driving from Inglewood, where Inglewood gives me more of the vibe of Florida, kind of has a lot of small one-story houses that kind of looked a lot of Spanish type houses, so to speak, and you drive. I forget what the road was, but it's towards Highland Ranch. And I remember going as soon as the sign hit of "Welcome to Highlands Ranch," like it just looked drastically different. Trees everywhere, golf courses left and right. I know we checked out that area, but that was not convenient enough for me or you, I guess. Especially if we need to go, one of us ends up having to work in the city. It's not very conducive towards that. And I wonder if Denver eventually is going to have to expand their light rail system to incorporate more of the surrounding areas, where DC has multiple different light rail or metro going to different places, north, east, west, south, the directions.
Well, it seems like, just looking at the Denver system, that it does go different directions, but the suburbs, there's suburbs all around the city and even within like the actual Denver proper. So there would need to be very expansive light rail in order to be able to hit every single place. But I think the point is to just have access from around points of the city, so that if you need to take the train into the city, you have an opportunity and like stops to do so, but not necessarily that you can get to every single suburb from the train, because that would be a very expansive system.
But it was just strange to me because in DC, the metro system, it just goes from one spot to the next. So the red line goes from Shady Grove all the way up to, where does it end? Glenmont. Whereas this, it seemed like a lot of the Denver light rail ended up at Union Station. So you would see it missed a lot of... The one thing that I do like about the DC metro is you can hit a lot of places inside of DC, where in Denver it seems like you miss a lot of the suburban areas or some sites to see. Like the Denver Zoo is difficult to get through the light rail system, or the botanical gardens, but I still really enjoyed the area. It seemed like people were how do I say this, friendlier in Denver. They seemed like they were on not on something not making a weed joke or anything, but that they were just having a good time out there. They seemed more friendly, especially the people we talked to. I remember distinctly when we had breakfast for the second day at the Denver Biscuit Company, which was delicious, by the way. Shout out to their biscuits. But I was sitting in waiting to get coffee behind somebody, and normally people on the East Coast, I'm going to generalize here, but they probably would have no care in the world about the person behind them, because I'm just thinking, because I wouldn't personally, because I want to get my coffee and go. But this guy and the husband and wife were like, oh, you can go, or like they were trying to get out of the way and move out of the way to let me go and not completely, try to block me off, which was nice. I don't know, just one little thing that I just remember.
Speaking of differences in culture, I noticed that when we were driving around, since we did a good bit of driving around the neighborhoods and the suburbs and stuff like that, I don't remember even once when we were waiting at a light and someone didn't turn right away, be either us being honked at or someone honking at another car, which was interesting because here, if I'm driving just around the area in which we live, if I am getting distracted by the radio or something out in the surroundings or whatever, and I don't start going as soon as the green light turns, probably about 70% of the time, if not more often, someone will honk. And I would do the same here. It's kind of like just people do that. But I didn't notice that there, which was a nice change of pace, because I noticed once we didn't go right away. And I was like, oh, go. And no one honked at us. And then someone in front of us wasn't going. And I was like, well, no one's honking, so I guess we shouldn't honk. But that was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, that was really strange. I guess I'll have to get used to that and try to be more patient when it comes to driving. Being
the most obnoxious drivers there.
But we went to breakfast each day, which was delicious. We went to Snooze, which was one, and then the Denver Biscuit Company, and then where else did we go? We went to one more.
I think it was called the French Press.
Yeah, that was the Denver Tech
really
area.
Good.
I don't know, because we were looking up before what Denver is actually known for food-wise. I guess we'll find out when we're there. It just seemed like it had a wide range of places. I don't know if they have any one particular thing that they're really known for. They had decent Mexican when we were there.
And I did see a lot of Italian places throughout. Not like Italian chains, but also more family-owned, smaller Italian places, which we should definitely check out.
We ended up in a cute little historical district. What was it, like Gaylord Historic district, which had a lot of small businesses, which I really enjoy.
Oh, in Washington Park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoy, like, I don't know, walking around and being part of small business versus, like, the generic Target or Walmart and
like malls or the large town
like
centers.
shopping districts. I really enjoy, like, the small, quaint vibe that you get from small businesses areas, and that's where we had there was a taco bar, which we should go back eventually when they have dollar tacos for Tuesday happy hour. Just a reminder for us in audio form.
Yeah, it was called Agave Taco Bar. It was really good.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else we should mention about our Denver trip? We ended up finding a place which we were excited about. I mean, there's so many places out there. The thing that we did notice, which I did notice, I don't know if I noticed it here, so to speak, but I noticed it more in Denver when we're actually actively looking, because there's new apartment complexes and then older ones, where older ones seem like they take into account spacing. They may not
like
have
extra storage,
like knowing that people are going to have extra stuff, whereas more modern buildings don't have that at all. More modern apartments are a lot smaller. They try to be, I guess, cooler looking, but you sacrifice that with space, and then it also costs more, which is strange to me. I guess it's just like they think their community vibe and everything is worth that much. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing I noticed too, because here, I guess I don't really remember, since we didn't look at as many apartments around here. Since there we had such a short amount of time, so it was a lot of pressure to look at a lot of places at once. But yeah, I definitely agree that some of a little bit older communities, meaning like maybe 10, 15 years old, maybe 20, but they were renovated and felt a lot newer, but they had outdoor storage and larger closets in the kitchen and just in general more space. But a lot of the newer ones, I felt like it was a closet in the bedroom, maybe a closet, well, not maybe, they all had the coat closets at the front, but no storage on the balcony, which kind of makes sense to me to have outdoor storage in general if you're in an apartment, because you probably have some items that you don't want just chilling in your apartment, maybe some outdoor gear or something like that. But also in Denver, because there's a lot of outdoor activities, if you ski or if you kayak or bike or really any outdoor activity that requires some sort of equipment, you would want to store that somewhere. And personally, I don't want to keep my skis, under my bed, or my bike in the middle of my living room or anything like that. So it'd be nice to have that storage. So shout out to the older apartments for thinking of that. And I guess now that I think about it, a reason that the newer apartments might not have that is because they're trying to maximize their space so that they can have more apartment units. So maybe they don't want to include that extra chunk on the balcony that could be storage, but they instead use that as the next person's balcony. So they kind of just cut the apartments a little bit less wide, shorter, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
It just seems like you can, they're maximizing their space more in the older apartments, because you're allowed to have, because I feel like we can store more things there, or the same amount here, because we have a pretty large apartment, but not with balcony or outdoor storage, so we have to use another room as sort of our storage space. But I think they have a proper layout. I guess we're sort of, gushing over the apartment that we chose, but it just seems like I'm just excited to move in. And I was really excited, surprisingly enough, about the weather there. I know a lot of people are like, oh, talking about the weather, we don't need the small talk, but I really enjoyed I enjoyed the dryness, I guess, so to speak, because coming from Maryland, it's just humid nonstop. So when we left, that was one thing that we noticed, is when we left at 3 o'clock in the morning, when we stepped outside, it was 80 degrees and probably 90% humidity. It felt disgusting.
It was very swampy outside.
3 o'clock in the morning, which is insane. The thing that I liked about Denver is when we woke up bright and early at 6 a.m. we were still on Eastern Standard Time for the whole trip at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. When we would walk out, it actually felt cold. That's what I really enjoyed, is at night it was cooler. The only time it gets hot is when the sun's out, but it's a lot cooler at night. And the strange thing that for me is when it rained there, the rain was really cold. I'm not sure it's always like that or it's just that one instance where that it was freezing. I was really thrown off by the rain, and it just cooled everything down where it dropped from 90 degrees all the way down to 70 right after the rainstorm hit for like a few, I guess, an hour or so.
Yeah. Also, when you were talking in the beginning about the apartments and the storage, I remembered this actually could be a learning experience for other people because we did not know about this, but we visited 2 apartments that had the exact same layout in terms of where the bedroom was, living room, dining room, outdoor space, etc., kitchen. Totally 100% exact same layout. I mean, maybe a foot difference here or there in terms of length, but layout was the same. And one apartment was, I think, about 200 or maybe 150 square feet more than the other, and that was the one we visited first. And we were like, oh, wow, this is a lot more square footage than we expected. This is a lot of space. And then we went to another apartment right after that had the same layout, but they had about 150 less square feet, and I was a little bit thrown off. I didn't realize kind of what the difference was because looking at the pictures, they were the same, and one didn't feel that much larger than the other. But then the leasing office at the second place that we went to was saying that some apartment complexes, I guess this might apply also if you're buying, but some people include the outdoor storage as or outdoor space in general as square footage, so the patio or the balcony or whatever, and some places don't. So that was interesting because personally I wouldn't include outdoor space as livable square footage because I'm not going to put my bed or my kitchen table outside. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's technically still living space, but it was interesting because that first place felt bigger, or we at least got the impression that it was larger because of that higher square footage number. But the second place, we were like, they tricked us. Even though they didn't. That's just how they measure their size of the apartment. But fun fact, if you are looking at apartments or houses, make sure that when they list the square footage, if it includes all the floors, if it includes the basement, doesn't, outdoor space, etc. Because you might think it's a lot of square feet, but then they end up including the basement and the deck and the attic and so just look out there, hot listeners. Just know what you're getting into and what you're looking at.
I think another tip that I realized if you're going out to a place that you've never been to, don't be afraid to ask the leasing agent, or not leasing agent, but the leasing agent or the realtor or whoever's showing you around the apartment complex if they have any recommendations on areas to go. They may not tell you apartments to go visit, if that's what you're looking for. But I think we asked, what are nice places to actually just go check out, go look around, and we got a pretty decent list that we could use to then try to incorporate that in finding apartments. Because basically on the 4th of July, since no apartments were really open, that's basically all we did was just drive around, looked at different areas. Marta was in the passenger seat looking in on Google Maps and popping up that area like, oh, that's a nice apartment, I wonder what that is. So you would look, and then you would look at apartments, and you would get a screenshot of all the different apartments in the area, and we were able to try to narrow it down. And then afterwards we sat down and did more research and set up a Google spreadsheet. Shout out, spreadsheets are really helpful when you're doing apartment searching or any sort of narrowing down of different things you want.
And pros cons list. If anyone watches Parks and Rec, Leslie Knope loves her pro con lists, and I do as well, because super helpful, especially if you're trying to decide a big decision or between several viable options. So spreadsheets and pro con lists. Also got to color coordinate. That's always important in the spreadsheets. Helps you attract your eyes to the ones that you visited or ones that you were interested in. Hashtag shout out to the conditional formatting on Google Sheets. That's always nice. At a random aside. Anyway. No, it's really nice is when you can do like a sum or formula, and then you can set up conditional formatting to say if it's more than this amount, turn it to this color so you know to ignore it, or green or yellow if it's in the middle. I know I've done that before for some things. I don't remember exactly what. It may have been for wedding stuff. I can't quite remember. That's a whole nother episode. Lots of learning experiences and just in general tips, I guess. That would be like a 13-parter of how Part tips 1 for wedding planning. Part 1 would be like the engagement. Like the day of the engagement, and then all the parts about venue and all that stuff.
And I think it's a different perspective from the female perspective versus the guy perspective when it comes to wedding planning, because you have different tasks or different things you need to get done.
That is true.
Yeah, and different things you per se worry about or don't have a preference towards, I should say.
True.
So I guess it's time to, now that we talked about our experience, because that's basically all we've been up to really, traveling to Denver. I guess we should talk about, continue our Italy trip. We left off Rome, basically headed to Florence and then Verona afterwards. And I guess that leads me to the one thing that I did notice, and I think I mentioned prior, is that we traveled a lot without the car because the train system in Italy was very expansive and very straightforward, easy to understand. I mean, we have a story about our issues with the train system, but that can happen to anybody. But there's trains coming every 30-some minutes to go from Florence all the way to Rome and Rome on, or Florence to Milan. And so I don't know if we really need a car to travel all around Italy. I mean, I'm sure that would be nice to take a road trip around Italy, but if you're going to visit cities, I don't know if car is really the best option, because I would be stressed out of my mind trying to drive in that city.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think a car is more useful if you're trying to do more off the beaten path type stuff, if you want to go to small towns or out into the country. But if you're sticking to the major cities, or even like Verona and Lake Como, which we'll get into in a little bit, but that wasn't a large city by any means, but still, if the main train system doesn't take you there, the smaller regional trains might. So it's just a matter of kind of figuring out where you want to go, what you want to do. And if you don't need a car, I personally always like having a car because it just gives you more freedom. But with research and kind of talking to people that have been to Italy before us, we decided that with the insurance issues and cost and driving in a foreign country and then dealing with parking in the city, that for our specific itinerary, training was, like, taking the train was just fine, and we didn't need a car.
Yeah. I personally just don't like the stress or the hassle of trying to worry about driving around places that you don't know the streets as well, don't know how the proper way to drive in Italy, because the one thing that I noticed is if they're in Verona, when they were going around corners and you couldn't see the other side and it was like small enough for one lane, is you had to honk to make sure no one on the other side was coming.
When there were like the, not U-turns, but the zigzag road, right?
Yeah, like where you're turning around a corner and you can't see anybody on the other side because it's so sharp. You have to honk to make sure that no one is coming the other way so you don't get hit. That was a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's definitely a little scary.
Do you want to start off with things that for Florence that we sort of want to highlight for people if they want to go?
Sure. So just for background, we might have mentioned this in the previous podcast if you were listening, but if you haven't, welcome. But we had a Rick Steves Italy book. I forget the exact name of the physical book that we had, but we had one of the Rick Steves Italy guidebooks to help us figure out just tips for Italy, places to eat, maps, stuff like that. And it was pretty inexpensive, so it was a nice little book to have. And actually, while I'm just talking about the book, it has sections. The one we got was covering the entire country of Italy, but it had sections based on the country, or the region within Italy. So a Rome section, a Florence section, a section about the lakes in the northern part of Italy. And the way that the binding of the book is made, you can actually rip out sections of the book, and the binding of the smaller section that you rip out will still be there, so you don't have to take the whole 800-page book. 800 pounds, that'd be
5-pound book.
Massive. You don't have to take all 800 pages. You can just rip out the little sections.
Except for when it came to ripping out the Rome section, because the Rome section was 100 and some pages long. That takes a little bit of effort and time to rip out. I'm sitting here. I'm the one that had to rip out the pages, so I was sitting on the couch for a good 20 minutes trying to pull out all these bindings in Rome. I was just sitting there struggling. You could see me physically shaking as I'm trying to pull it out without. With this, it's like a delicate strength versus finesse type thing,
and
where you don't want
to. Pages are very thin.
Yeah,
too.
You don't want to accidentally rip a good amount of the pages. So I'm like trying to put enough force in to pull it off, but not enough force where I accidentally ripped the thing in half. So I'm sitting here like struggling, like shaking a little bit with sweat going across my brow as I'm trying to rip out the Rome section. But we ended up doing it, and I thought that was actually kind of a smart thing for that book to do. It's really helpful. And I'm guessing you're going to get into the audio tour stuff.
Yeah.
And if what you hear you like, what I did for the last episode 3, is that I put the links for the Android and iPhone app of Rick Steve. So if you just click in the description, it'll take you right there if you want to check it out. So look in the description for this episode as well.
Nice. But anyway, yeah, so Florence, we used the book a lot, but we also got recommendations from the place where we stayed, which we booked for this trip, all of our accommodations on booking.com, because it's pretty I think it's pretty reliable across different accommodations and hotels, because they have to, the places where you stay have to be like actually certified through that website. So that's kind of how we knew that it wasn't going to be something that wasn't real or anything like that. So anyway, we booked, we thought it was a hotel, but it really was more like an apartment or an Airbnb, because it was an excellent location, but for all 3 of the places we stayed at, actually, in our trip, we had to contact the hotel beforehand. They message you via the booking.com site, and they say, like, hey, what time are you arriving? And as an American, in American hotels, I'm used to, like, hey, check-in's 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. until, early in the morning even. You can probably check in at, like, 1 a.m. But someone asking, like, oh, what time are you checking in? And we're traveling by train. We don't know if the train's going to get delayed or whatever. So I'm like, between 5 and 7? That's, I don't want to say 6:32 and then our train gets delayed or something. So.
Or something worse.
Like getting canceled, but we'll get into that. So anyway, and another thing that made the communication with the hotel a little bit more complex is that neither of us had consistent Wi-Fi or data or international plan, because we were fine without it. And Adam had it just as a backup, but we didn't want to be like texting and calling everyone from home needlessly when we could use Wi-Fi to communicate with people that way. But anyway, so the place where we stayed was this apartment on the second or third floor of this building, but there was a big giant wooden doors that led into the, I guess, that section of the building, and then there was another gate to actually.
Yeah, I think I mentioned last time I had like 5 different keys to get into our
So
apartment.
anyway, we got there and the room was very nice, but some of the recommendations we got from the woman who, I guess, ran that hotel and opened the door for us and everything were a pizza place and a gelato place, and we went to both, and they were both delicious, and we went to both on multiple occasions. The pizza place was called, and forgive me for my pronunciation if it's incorrect, but L'Antica Pizzeria da Michele Ferenzi. And that and a bunch of other restaurants that we liked going to were in this same plaza. So I think, and the plaza was about, 5 to 10 minute walk from our
it was a cute
accommodation. So it was funny because that was our go-to area, even though, Florence is a huge city, so you could really go, or not huge, but there's a lot of restaurants, so you could really go wherever you want, but it was convenient to know that there's so many restaurants in that one plaza that we wouldn't even be able to hit them all in our several days stay. But that pizza place, L'Antica Pizzeria da Michele Ferenzi, delicious, best pizza I've ever had. Also, I think they started in Naples, Italy, so if you ever go to Naples, you can also check out that restaurant there. But it was just so good. The dough was nice and fresh, and it wasn't like you can't even picture an American DiGiorno or like Domino's perfectly circular pizza with all the ingredients perfectly laid out, because it's just they roll out the dough. It's like this oval shape, maybe. It's definitely not a perfect circle, and everything's just so fresh and very
They give
tasty.
you the whole pizza pie.
Yep, and they give you the whole pizza.
I still remember watching the two. It was like a grandma and grandpa chilling in the corner, and I was like, oh, they got one like large pizza. I'm like, oh, I guess they're sharing it. And then the next thing I know, they're getting another pizza to put in front of the grandma. And then we're eating our meal because we split like half of the pizza. So I took half and you took half. And then I look over and they're already done. They're like sped eating through it all.
But to be fair, I think that comparing that pizza to maybe a pizza you could get here at one of the pizza delivery services or whatever, it felt a lot lighter.
Yeah, it was definitely easier to eat.
It was still filling. Half a pizza was still plenty of food. But I think it just didn't have some of those extra preservatives or whatever.
Wasn't as greasy either.
Definitely not as greasy. Because I know some people here that put like a napkin or something on top of the pizza to absorb some of the grease. But I don't personally do that. I guess if it's like really greasy, I might. But there, I didn't even feel the need to do that because it was just sauce, cheese, and then whatever topping. So it didn't have that extra greasiness to it, but so good.
One of the things that we noticed is when you know a place is good is late at night when I guess everybody's getting off work in Italy. When we would go back to the plaza late at night, we'd always see that place just packed with people waiting, I guess, to either sit down or get a pie or get something there. It was always just packed, it seemed like, except for lunchtime when everyone's working. So that's when we went. We went once, you enjoyed it, and you really wanted to go again, so we were trying to figure out a way to get there just because I didn't want you to get upset. But it was pretty delicious. I think there was actually a few restaurants in that plaza, because we seemed like when we looked up places to eat there, it just took us to that piazza every time we were trying to search for something like I think what was it called? Zaza was in there.
Was it Trattoria Zaza?
Yeah, something like that. It was delicious. We were actually able to sit outside. I feel like we got really lucky when it came to sitting in these restaurants, where we always wanted to sit outside, but it seemed some restaurants always seemed packed. Like for the Zaza restaurant, we wanted to sit outside, but we were like, oh, okay, we got up to the front. We're like, okay, well, I guess we'll sit inside. So the lady was like, oh, come along, and I guess we just missed it because we thought they were talking to the people in front of us, but they went, and then an Asian couple behind us just hopped in front of us, and we're like, okay, I guess they walked in front. And then next thing we know, the other hostess comes over like, oh, you want to sit outside? Because there's an open table now. And we're like, yeah. So it sort of worked out in our favor. It was just really enjoyable to sit outside because it wasn't like muggy or disgusting. And in Italy, or at least in Florence, we noticed that they have a lot of these outdoor, well, Rome too, they had outdoor seating. And in Florence, they had like little glass encompassed like areas to hold more people, which I always wondered why they don't do that. I haven't seen that here because it seems like kind of a smart thing. If you have outdoor seating, you can maybe make a little thing to encompass it, get a few misters going, especially in the summer, and you have more outdoor seating. Or in the winter because you can close it and then make it warmer.
That's true. That's a good idea.
Shout out to anybody, any businesses, restaurant businesses, listen to this. If you take that idea from us, well, we weren't the first ones to think of it because people in Italy already has.
Yeah. And also in that plaza, which I remembered was called the Plaza, or in Italy, Piazza del Mercato Centrale, but also if you just Google the name of the pizza restaurant or the gelato place that I'm about to mention next, you could find it. Super good recommendations because we loved both of them. But the gelato place we went to was called Etamo, and I think it was right next door to that pizza place, and I am pretty embarrassed, but I think we went there 4 times or 5 times. I won't say how many days we were in Florence because then you can do the math of how often we ate there. But it was
every day. We ate gelato. Every day.
Literally every day. The first day, something was wrong because the first day of our trip, so when we were in Rome, I was like, oh, I'm full. I won't have any. And then every day after that, I was like, I'll eat whenever because gelato is so good in Italy.
It sort of evened out the amount that we ate because there was one day where I got too full, so you had gelato, and then I never had gelato that day, and then I had gelato twice one day, and you only had it once, so we had it roughly the same amount, which
was a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, that place was really good, and I think the people that worked there worked the same shifts every day because when we went at night, we saw the same woman every time. And I was like, Adam, I can't show my face here anymore because this lady has seen me like 3 nights in a row. And she's like, is this girl, like, is she okay? Does she eat dinner? Why does she eat gelato every night?
You know, it's not always about you. I was also there every single day,
too. I just always worry what people are going to think, even though in the end, especially when you're on vacation, just as long as you're not obnoxious, but just do what you like. If you want to eat gelato every day, you do you. Try to get some other food in there, but if not, if you just eat gelato 24/7, more power to you.
We also walked around so much, so I didn't feel
Yeah.
disgusting to eat gelato as much as we did, or the pasta or pizza, especially because the pasta and pizza were absolutely delicious, so I didn't feel disgusting afterwards, because we're walking, it seemed like forever, because we're taking tours of museums, walking through the city, walking here, walking there. They also had, at that place, I noticed, which was kind of a strange thing that I didn't think would be taste that great, or it would taste interesting, not like it would taste bad, but it was apparently awarded like the 2018 or 2017 like flavor of the year or something, that they entered in a competition, because apparently that happens with gelato places. But it was like strawberry, chocolate, and balsamic vinegar, which I tried. Very delicious. I think I did not expect it to taste that great, but I don't know. There's just something different about it. You got pistachio every day there. I tried to switch it up, it seemed like.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I've been to Italy previously with my family, and we also ate gelato a lot when I came previously, and my mom really likes the pistachio flavor. And I think when I was younger and a little bit, obnoxious, I would just be annoying and like give my mom some grief about, why you're always getting pistachio, why do you get the same flavor, even though I was probably getting chocolate every time, so I was really being hypocritical.
And getting it all over your face.
And, when I eat ice cream, it's just everywhere. But this time, I tried pistachio once because I was like, I remember my mom saying it was really good, and I don't quite remember the taste of it. And then I realized it was really good, so there must be like a pistachio gelato-liking gene in my body that
definitely.
my mom also has. That's how it works. But then I ate it every day, and Adam's like, didn't you used to give your mom a hard time about how she loved eating pistachio gelato? And I was like, no, that never happened.
Don't point out me being hypocritical. How dare you?
But yeah, it definitely happened. But, as long as you enjoy what you like, don't give people a hard time. But, when you're a teenager, sometimes you just are saying things that maybe you don't mean because of how you're thinking. And
how you're
going
thinking,
on.
the hormones racing.
Hormones, yeah, so.
All the body changes that's going on.
Anyway,
I think puberty is another conversation we'll have later down the line.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Not sure. Yeah, we'll just leave that to another episode.
Just let it lie there.
But another thing about Florence that isn't food related, but I think is definitely worth mentioning, is if you're interested in seeing a lot of the different sites, so museums, parks, churches, cathedrals, all this stuff, they have something called the Firenze card, which is pretty much a pass that you pay up front a certain sum, a lump sum. I mean, lump sum makes it sound like it's a lot of money. I think it was around 100, maybe a little more, a little less. But it gives you access to a very large variety of the touristy attractions, including some of the larger ones, like the Academia Museum, the Uffizi Gallery, and plenty more of the museums and stuff like that. So we ended up getting that, and I think it was valid for 48 hours or 72 hours.
72.
So that's 3 full days, and we definitely got our money's worth because we saw a bunch of, like, we went to the Uffizi Gallery and Academia, which is where the famous Michelangelo's David sculpture is, which is just crazy to see in person and, like, hear about how that was sculpted so many years ago just by hand.
Solid block of marble.
Yeah, it's incredible in my opinion. I think in a lot of people's opinion, actually.
Then we were just walking around the botanical gardens of Denver, and we saw some little stone sculptures. We were like, we've seen better.
What is this? This is not impressive sculpture, even though, in my opinion, sculptures in general are impressive if you're doing it by hand, because I feel like if I just can't imagine sculpting something, but I feel like if I did, I would just take one whack at it and either wouldn't make a dent or it would just crack the entire thing in half.
Exactly. It takes strength and finesse, like I was doing with that book.
With the book, that's right.
Yeah,
maybe you'd be a good sculptor.
Maybe I would be. I have no artistic bone in my body.
Anyway, but yeah, the card was cool because in addition to having that access to all of these different tourist attractions, you also get to skip the line in a bunch of them. So both in the Uffizi Gallery and the Academia as two of the kind of main places that we went that are two of the top attractions, I think, we got to just skip the line entirely, which was
that's a major
nice.
benefit with it, because a lot of times we would see a long line for people to get into this place, and that's like to just buy the ticket right when you get there. So I would sort of recommend this because you actually get your money's worth if you want to see all these places. I think we tallied it up, and we actually were not making money, but we used up the amount that we paid for it and some extra some.
Yeah.
Where I think it's even worth it just because you get in the front of the line. Even if you don't make that amount that you paid for it, you're still, not
saving time.
Yeah, you're not wasting your time sitting in these long lines, because I can imagine those lines take like an hour or two, and that's other time you could be using exploring the beautiful city of Florence.
Yeah. And you mentioned we tallied up. So the way that you can do that is if you visit 5 or 10 museums or different places like that, each museum also, if you don't have the Frenzy card, it also just has the actual cost of admission. So if the ticket is 12 euros, for example, then you can just kind of take note, okay, I spent 12 euros here, 20 here, and that's how you kind of figure out if the card was quote unquote worth it. Even though to me, in terms of time, just having that little bit of extra time on vacation, not standing in a line in the heat, is worth it. But
I could imagine we have been more, I don't want to say miserable, but we wouldn't have been as happy sitting in line waiting to get into this place where maybe at a certain point you have to decide whether your time is worth it getting to this place. Like if we go into the academia, we see David, is it as impressive if we waited in a line for 2 hours, or is it like, oh my goodness, I waited just for this? Even though I feel like you still would be, because David's sculpture is amazing. But the Uffizi, like the art gallery, would that be worth it waiting that long? Like if you're not into art as much, I think just the time aspect alone is definitely well worth it, because we would hop in line and just get in right away, it seemed like.
Agreed. Any other more thoughts about Florence before we get into some Tuscany adventures that we had?
Tuscany adventures. The other thing that I should mention about the Frenzy card, there are places I think you can get extra admission to, but that tower that we went to, it was like
the Duomo Tower?
No, it wasn't the Duomo. It was I forget what it was called, but it was out. There was a piazza with a bunch of sculptures on the right where they had like the Perseus and the Medusa
I know
head.
what you're talking about, but I
had
the
the fake David sculpture in front to watch over the entrance. But that area we were actually able to go into the catacombs where they show that Florence used to have, or like they were digging up like an amphitheater that Florence used to have in that area, which I thought was really cool. I mean, I thought it was cool because you could see certain things that they were digging up, like prior wells, maybe some seats that the amphitheater would have had. But it looks like obviously just like stone, so it's not visually that amazing, but I thought it's just cool to see how they're going about digging all this up. And then we were able with the Frenzy card just to go up into the castle, we'll get to explore everything, and then also go up to the top of the tower, which is an extra mission if you're just going yourself without the Frenzy card, but the Frenzy card is all encompassing, so you're able to go up to the top, take nice pictures, nice selfies, which you look at my Instagram, it's probably all over that. Marta's not Instagram. We have plenty of selfies from when we were in Italy. I'll put the description or the link in the description below to our Instagrams if you want to go follow us. But I guess we should get on to our fun Tuscany adventure.
Yes. So, in one of our days that we were in Florence, we decided to do a bike tour of Tuscany, which, if you're not familiar, Tuscany is the wine region outside of Florence. And there's so many beautiful wineries and just stunning views and land that just they grow the wine, they grow the grapes, and it's just very beautiful. So we decided, based on a recommendation that we got, to do a bike tour in Tuscany. So I guess whenever you get a recommendation from someone and you decide to do it, you have kind of this vision of what you imagine this experience to be, even though you've never been on it. And I guess we didn't really ask much specifics because a bike tour of Tuscany seems pretty, self-explanatory. We're going to get on a bike. We're going to drive around this wine country, get to look at some wineries, etc. So what I pictured personally was, and I think I had this vision because once we were in Napa Valley in California, and they had bike tours as well of the wine country. And I think there, so they have the main street for cars, and I think the bike tours are on a separate bike trail that is off of the main road, I think. I've never done it, but that's kind of how I'm remembering it. So that's what I pictured here, too. I pictured there being a main road, obviously, that goes through the region for cars to drive on, but I thought that our bike tour would be on a separate trail for bikes. So then we met in Florence, and then we got transported via a van from Florence to the wine region, which was very quick. I think it was like 25 minutes at most, door to door. And then we get there, and we have to sign the waivers and get our helmets and find a bike that fits our height and physique and whatever. And so then we start this bike tour.
And we should give some context about who's in the group. So there's me and you. Then there's there's two older couple, or not two older couple. There's an older couple who seem like they're in pretty decent shape, and they're just exploring Italy right now. They were nice. We talked to them. Another woman who I think was from France. It seemed like her accent.
I don't think she was. I think she was from Western Europe, but I don't think it was France.
You don't think it was France? Okay.
I can't quite remember that.
And then, as what Marta and I like to call them, the flip-flop gang was also there. There were these shorter girls who were going on a bike tour, but they decided to wear flip-flops for biking. And mind you, this is, I don't know if Marta mentioned this. I don't think she did. This was a 7-mile bike, I think we should mention. A 7-mile bike tour. We have to bike 7 miles up and down hills, and up hills in Italy can be a little rough because the hills are pretty steep.
Yes, and getting back to where exactly we were biking, unfortunately, it was not in this picturesque little bike trail that I pictured in my mind. It was on this thing called a road. A road where also there were cars driving, and as Adam alluded to earlier, the way that some Italian drivers drive is a little bit different than what we're used to in the United States, at least in my personal experience. If I'm driving on a road and there's a biker or a runner or really anyone doing anything on the side of the road, if I have the space, I will go into the left lane or at least halfway into the left lane to pass them, give them space, make sure I don't scare the person on the bike or whatever. But, we had a interesting experience. I think we were trying to stay on the right side of the lane that we were in as well, but when people passed us, I don't even think they were in the left lane or in the opposing lane at all. No. At all. They were still in the right lane, and we were in the right lane on our bikes, just a little bit, maybe a foot and a half away from the cars. Honestly, it was very close, and it was
a little nerve-wracking, especially when you're
nerve-wracking.
When you're going uphill and you're going slower. It seems like you control less when you're going slow, or fast. It's easier to go straight. You're wobbling more. So I was always nervous that I would accidentally peek out and get clipped by a car, which was really scary. So I guess it didn't start off great, this bike tour, I should say, because we were stuck in the back behind the flip-flop gang. So the way things were working, there was a Italian lady leading the tour, and then they had a SUV in the back to follow whoever was in the back to make sure that they didn't get lost. And they were going to use that van. Once we biked 7 miles, we were going to put the bikes in the car or in that van. They would drive them back. We would tour the winery that we were at. Then we'll get in the van and then go back to where we started, basically. So we didn't have to bike back the extra 7 miles, which would have been even more insane.
After drinking some wine.
We ended up getting behind the flip-flop gang, so we were the last two in the back. The person in front, the Italian lady leading the tour, the one couple, and the Western European girl, she ended up passing the flip-flop gang smartly early on because they were going so slow, and caught up to them, so they were able to keep up. Us, we were stuck behind them because we ended up getting into a city area, so it was kind of hard because there was cars around, so we couldn't pass them. So when we got on a straightaway, we were finally able to zoom past them. But unfortunately, we got so far away, it was hard to see the people in front which way they went. And unfortunately, there was a split in the road. So we ended up, I was in front, so I had to make a decision on which way they went. I don't know how I made the decision, but I decided to go left because it was downhill. And I was like, oh, that seems like a more scenic route than this random side street to the right, which made sense in my brain. So we went down this hill. It was very steep, and it was an easy ride down, but I was nervous, what if I chose the wrong way? Because I got down the hill, and it was a long straightaway. I didn't see them. I'm like, where the heck did they go? Why haven't they stopped yet? Why didn't the Italian tour lady stop in the split? Because she could have looked back and realized, hey, not everybody's here. And, of course, luckily enough, Flip Flop Gang have, they're in the back, so they have the SUV to tell them which way to go. And we were the unlucky ones in the middle trying to figure out which way to go. So we went on the left side, went for a long while down the hill, down the flat straightaway. I couldn't see anybody in front of me. You couldn't see anybody as well, and we're kind of upset because, where could they have gone? We were now worried that they went the opposite path. We went a little bit farther, still couldn't see them anywhere, so we just stopped. We were like, crap, because we don't have, I have cell service, but I'm not sure who to call to get a taxi.
And we also didn't get a map or any idea before the tour where we were ending up or where we should kind of go if we do get lost. It was kind of just assumed that we would all follow the tour guide lady, even though there was a very big distance between the beginning and the ending tour group.
Maybe if we were, instead of trying to catch up to the other ones, we could have just stopped at the split and let the Flip Flop Gang catch up, and then the truck would have told us which way to go. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but we sort of decided, I guess we went the wrong way, because it was a very straight path. We were like, where could they have gone? We should have been able to see them. So we started turning around, going back up the hill, basically. We got back up maybe halfway. And, of course, here comes the 3 Flip-Flop Gang coming down with the SUV. And they're like, oh, the guy in the SUV who didn't speak English, but he's like, oh, it's that way, basically. He was pointing that way. I'm like, oh, great. Thank you. So we ended up turning around, passing the Flip-Flop Gang again, and then finally met up with the lady. And to say the least, we weren't in the best of moods, just because we were sort of tired out from just going up the steep hill, just walking up, trying to get back to the split, because we thought we went the wrong way and got a little upset, so to speak.
Yeah, but in the end, it was nice to get to the winery finally and try the wine and see the vineyard. But it was just that one part that really was a little bit frustrating. Well, it was a lot more than a little bit frustrating. But looking back, we can be a little bit more optimistic.
Yeah, I think we definitely enjoyed it. I would, if anybody's going on a Tuscany bike tour, make sure you're in semi-decent shape to bike, because going up those hills can be a little rough. I know at some points I had to stop and just walk up, just because it seemed like I was just exerting unnecessary energy just to try to bike up the hill. And I could have just walked and it was easier. It would have been a little slower, or actually probably the same speed with the pace that I was going for some uphills. But yeah, then you finally get to the back roads. We finally take a gravel path. The lady kept saying that it's only a little bit farther down, a little bit farther down, a little bit farther down, and finally, when it was a little bit farther down, we made it. So the gravel path was a little interesting. It was like off-road biking, but I think it was nice because we got to see a lot of pictures, get a lot of pictures of the Tuscany countryside. I think it was I would say it was a fun experience. Looking back, it's a fun story to tell.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why we're telling it on this podcast now, because I'm sure all the hot listeners love hearing it. Hey, Adam here, just reminding you to please go over, enjoy episode 5 where we talk about Verena and traveling tips. Also, remember, you can find us on iTunes and also find us on Twitter at HotPod, Facebook.com/HotPod. We are everywhere. If you're listening to us on the Apple Podcast app, please scroll down in that feed. Give us a 5-star rating, maybe write us a review, let us know what we're doing good, what we're doing bad. We'd like to have a lot of feedback. But as a reminder, please, there is going to be another episode 5 coming on Tuesday, which is today, as you're listening to this. So please go download that as well if you want to hear about more, or if you want to hear the continuation of our trip to Verena. It's a great another 50-minute conversation that Marta and I had. We just kept talking about our trip to Italy and kept gushing about it. So I think you all will enjoy it. So head on over, listen. I'm going to stop talking now. So bye.